Hello again, welcome to Serendipity Forge. I'm Robert Wood, lead smith. It's only our fourth video. We're still trying to get the hang of this, and production values are probably not great. But we're doing the best we can with what we have. If you've watched our videos, you like them, hit that like and subscribe button. We appreciate all the support. Leave a comment. Let us know what you'd like to see. Today, we did something a little different. Didn't do any forge work on the video today. I put out a little feeler on Facebook to see what the folks on Facebook wanted to see. And the first thing on the list, one of the first things on the list actually was somebody wanted to see how I do some of my leather work. So today's video was just some quick and dirty leather work on one of my personal knives. As a matter of fact, this one that's still wrapped in the saran wrap from the video. I have this one and this. And these are the only two knives I've ever made that I've kept. Mainly because, well, I made them, thought about selling them. And this one actually had a little crack in the blade. Now, I ground the crack out for my own personal use, but if it had a crack in the blade, I'm not selling it. Even if the crack's gone, I'm not taking a chance. I'm not selling it. This one, well, after I got it together, the handle just didn't suit me for something I wanted to sell. So I kept it for myself. But nevertheless, today's video was about leather work, and we'll get right to it. And here we've got our tools and materials all together. Got a couple of hole punchers. These came from Harbor Freight. They're from China, but they work for me. I've got our stitch spacer. I believe that's 5 stitches per inch. I've got our edge marker. The Sharpie, which nobody can live without. It's just a couple of my everyday carry knives that I made and I kept for myself. And we'll be making a sheath today for that one. It's just something I didn't want to sell. And graph paper. Always got to have graph paper, at least I do. So I have a little thin strip. I'm going to wrap it around the handle at just about where I want my sheath to go up that high. Good enough. Going to wrap it around and mark it. Now I'm going to count my marks, and I believe I came up to 8 quarters there. No, 12 quarters. And then I'm going to add 4 more quarters to make up for the lap of the leather on the sides. So a total of 16 spaces. I'll divide that in half and I'll come over 8 blocks, 8 quarters, and make a mark. That's where I want the back edge of my sheath. That should allow plenty of room in the leather, plenty of room for the knife to fit in easily. And I just start freehand drawing. Now, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not a leather maker. Other people might see this and watch what I'm doing and say, hey, this guy's an idiot. He's not doing it right. Well, maybe I'm not, but I'm doing what works for me. And if it works for me, it's good enough. That's kind of the way I want the top of my sheath. Now I'm just going to sketch up the belt loop. And get it cut out. Now we're all cut out, so I'll get this leather. And this isn't great leather, it's way too thin, thinner than anything I'd consider using on a customer sheath. But it'll do for me. And I'm just gonna make a center mark. Find it to be very important to remember where the center of your sheath is. And I'll just trace one side and then the other.
Cut.
And we'll get it cut out. Now we're all cut out. And I'll take my stitch groover and mark around the edges. And I'm going to use those marks as a reference for where I'm going to start my stitches at the top of the sheath, as well as keeping my stitches a uniform distance from the edge. Done with that. Now we'll take our stitch marker, and I've got to get the most important tool for this part of the job, my glasses. And I'm going to start at the top. I'm going to make one mark, and then I'm just going to roll my stitch marker around the line. Left by the spacer. There we go, that done. Sharpie time. I like to mark my stitch where my stitch holes are going to go. It makes it easier for me to see them. And a lot of times I have my daughter punch the holes or my son punch the holes, and it makes it easier for them to see them. Count down and make sure that I have an equal number of stitches on each half of the sheath. And if all has gone well, when I fold this sheath in half, those stitch holes will line up. And it won't be terribly hard to sew. Make a little mark in the center. Make sure it's all even. And good enough. Now it's time for the tiresome job of marking holes. So, let's see. Just how fast can we do that? They're done. That was quick and painless. So I'll take a piece of the same leather and I'm going to mark out a bolster. Bolster goes between the two halves of your sheath, adds a little more strength to the edge, adds a little more thickness, and most importantly, it helps keep the edge from cutting the threads when the knife goes in and out of the sheath. You'll notice on the top hole, there's a little space between the top hole and where the stitches start, and that's because that top hole's actually going to be for a rivet. And when I punched it, it's one size bigger than the holes I punched for the stitches. Oh, I almost forgot to mark my rivet holes for my belt loop. Gotta fix that, can't have that. Oh, well, I can see this is gonna be tedious. But I just don't think I have any more magic hole punching left, so I guess we'll have to do this the hard way. There we go, time to do a little sewing now. Since this is chiefly going to be a video about wet fitting the sheath, which is what was asked for, I'm only going to tack the sheath together and not sew it up solid like I would be if it were ready to go and be put to use tomorrow. So normally I use 3 times the length around the edge for my thread length. I'm only using 2 times for this because it's just going to be tacked together and not sewed up with a double stitch. And I'm getting old and my hands are not quite steady enough to pass that thread the way I wish they would, but we got it done anyway. And the bolster goes in. And I'll go through the rivet hole, back out the other side. I hate sewing. My dad actually likes sewing, so I usually get the sheets almost together and take them to him and he sews them. Or if my youngest son's here, he sews them up. I do the rest of the work. And I'm just going to tighten that down and snug it down with a square knot. Now mind you, this is just a temporary thread to hold everything together for the wet fitting. There we go. Now I'm just going to catch in one side and out the other all the way to the end. And there's our last stitch. Now I'm just going to back stitch through the holes, just 2 or 3 holes to hold the thread in there snug. Keep everything together. Keep it the way it should be, and snip it off. Now we're all stitched up. It's time to start working on the knife. Got some saran wrap or plastic wrap or whatever store brand you want. It's all irritating. It's all a pain in the butt to get off the roll. I have a long history of hatred with this stuff. And as you can see, it is still trying to defeat me, but I will prevail in the end. There we go. Yep, that's way more than I need, but I'm going to take it anyway. Now, just wrap the knife up in the saran wrap, nice and cozy. Cover the blade up, fold back around over the tip, being careful not to poke any holes. Wrap the blade up enough. I don't want the saran wrap to be so bulky that it makes the blade or the knife a great deal larger in diameter than it normally is, but I do want enough to keep it dry. So now we've got a bowl of warm water, and I'm just going to dunk the sheath in there. Get it good and damp, shake a little of the excess water off. In goes the sheath, and just mold the leather with your fingers to fit the sheath to start with. Nice and tight. Then I'll take the back of my stitching wheel or a fid or any other good smooth piece of wood or bone or whatever glass you have and smooth everything down and fit it around the knife, being careful around the edge because that knife's sharp. It will cut through the leather, but I want it to be form-fitting. So just work it down with a smooth edge, stretch it around the knife till it fits up right. There we go. And that's all we can do. We're done until it dries. I hope that was short enough for you. Not too boring. Like I said, no fire, no coal smoke, no swinging hammers today, just a little leather work, a little something quick and dirty thrown together for my own use. I don't care if it's beautiful or not, as long as it hangs my knife on my belt, that's all I care about. Now my customers get something a little better quality than I wanted for myself. Mind you, I'm not a leathersmith. I'm not a leather worker. I'm not good at leather, but I do the best I can. And as long as you're doing the best you can, you're doing good enough. Hope you all enjoyed today's video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.